Have you ever gotten a message from your doctor's office saying, please call us back at your earliest convenience, and you automatically, before even bringing up their number, figure out you must have some terminal diagnosis? Or maybe you get a text from your loved one that says, hey, can we talk? And your mind automatically jumps to, this is something bad. Worst case scenario, this relationship might be over. Or maybe you're in a conversation and you're starting to get overwhelmed to the point that you can't even concentrate on what's really being said. You can't think clearly. You're like flooded. Today we're going to talk about 2 blind spots that can hijack you from being able to stay present in reality. The first is catastrophizing, and the second is flooding. I'm Robyn Coffman, board-certified Christian counselor and almost 3 decades in private practice. I help women live more unlocked in their life, relationships, and faith, yet without the overwhelm. This is the deep dive number 4 of the You Can't See It Blind Spot series. If you're new here, welcome. Every episode covers 2 blind spots that keep you stuck without realizing it. I've put the link to the playlist in the description so you can catch up on all of them. Okay, so let's get started with the first one, catastrophizing. Catastrophizing is when we predict the future to be the worst case scenario. We fast forward to the worst possible outcome and our mind gets stuck and locked in that place, as if the disaster has already been decided. Catastrophizing trumps our curiosity, and we catch ourselves living in a horrible future, even though the present says we don't know yet. It may sound like this in your head. Well, I haven't been able to break through in this area of my life. I'm always going to be this way. Or maybe you screwed up at work and you've already decided you're going to get fired. Or maybe you feel convicted about a sin and you've determined that God is going to have nothing to do with you, even if you do your best to be in his good graces again. What makes it a blind spot is that you're convinced that you know how it's going to end. So you stop being present to what's actually happening. You stop listening. You stop praying with anticipation. You already have this sentence written over you and your life. I can't tell you how many times I have scared myself pretty much to a scenario of death. My family has a history of breast cancer, and so the minute and the smallest little inconsistency that shows up on my mammogram, I'm thinking, when does chemo start? And I don't say that lightly because our families actually walk through it. And that's the tension with catastrophizing. We often draw from the past and we predetermine our future because we think we've gathered enough information to bet on what that future is going to be. So my question to you to reflect on is, where might you be sentencing your future and the present says, wait a second, we don't have all the facts yet? Where are you trapped in a cycle of living out a worst case scenario in your head that is blocking curiosity to enter the picture, or even the Holy Spirit to show you something new? One of the things I've taught my clients to do is to think, hey, if I can think of the worst case scenario, that tells me my brain is functioning high enough to have that kind of imagination. I might as well also envision the best case scenario. Sometimes we forget that that's an option too. So whenever you catch yourself caught in that worst case scenario loop, remember, you can always think about the best case scenario too, because who's to say? Now the next blind spot is flooding. Flooding is when our emotions rise so high that we can no longer take input from what's going on around us in a rational way. It takes over our ability to analyze, to reason, to think, even to respond well. It's not like you're trying to overreact on purpose, even though others around you might be saying, calm down already. It's that your nervous system has gone offline. It literally, like a flood, has flooded out. By nature, flooding isn't rational. It just takes over. What does it look like? You just go blank. Or you get hot so fast you say things you regret. You could shut down. You can start crying uncontrollably. How we flood varies. When we flood, we can't access logic anymore. We can't even necessarily access truth. A lot of times we can't even access the ability to pray. What I want you to know, flooding is normal. Everyone does it. What floods you might not flood me, but it's a normal human experience when we are overwhelmed. Flooding even happens with great emotions, like when we are overjoyed and we can't stop laughing uncontrollably, or our tears of joy come streaming down our face, and then we catch ourselves that we're flooded. It's literally like our emotions are pouring out of us. So flooding isn't good or bad, it's just a reaction that we have. What we need to learn to do is to monitor ourselves when we catch ourselves, ideally right before we flood. So we realize, hey, we need to take a break. We need to pause. We need to be able to recognize our nervous system is saying we're hitting our limit. We're going from green, yellow, orange, red way too fast. Rarely can we make good decisions when we're flooded. In fact, pausing is the best remedy. Forcing more conversation or to complete a task is harmful to your soul. It is not going to be beneficial. I know I've pushed myself when I just want to get my project done. I have this deadline, so I'm going to push. But I make the silliest mistakes and I don't see clearly. Yet when I take a break, go for a walk, come back, I can't tell you how much clearer I am. And they've done studies that it takes the body, the blood pressure, our pulse, at least 20 minutes to calm back down before we're at a rested state again. So if the only thing you remember is, hey, I got to take a break, this is normal, I don't have to judge myself for it, my physical body as well as my emotional state needs to downshift. And that requires a true break from whatever that thing is that has created the overreaction. The hard thing is we rarely realize we're flooded once we're flooded. And so this is when relationships get really sticky, conversations go south really fast. What's important is afterwards, once we're back in a calm state, is to do the repair to whatever went off the rails. That takes humility and some good communication skills, but it's the thing that matters most. We can't avoid flooding, but we can always go back and repair. It's obvious how a big thing might flood us if we get shocking news about something. Maybe a loved one passes or we get let go from our job. But flooding can also happen little by little, just stacked upon stack of minor irritants, and it just takes one more thing and we hit our tipping point. I've seen this a lot in my counseling practice when we're working on something pretty deep and important in someone's story, and I can just see by their physical agitation, my client is starting to flood. And yet they are so desiring to have a breakthrough. They don't see the cues themselves, and before I know it, I can tell they're offline. So sometimes I recommend, you know what, let's just pause. What if we just stand up, move our bodies a little bit, take a deep breath. Let's switch over to this and we can come back to that. And it's amazing giving ourselves that compassion and grace so we can get back online produces far greater results than when we force outcomes. So this is what I want you to hear. Catastrophizing and flooding aren't character flaws, but they can become habits, and it takes us being intentional to catch it so that we can prevent from going off the rails, either imagining the worst case scenario or getting so overwhelmed. Either way, we lose our presence in the moment. My question for you is, do you know your flooding cues? That is a great place to start. Do you find yourself sighing or tapping your foot or breaking eye contact? Does your voice start to raise? All of these things are indicators that your emotional temperature is starting to rise. It's much easier to see in someone else than in ourselves, but that's what we're responsible for, is ourself. So think about that. What are your cues that you know I'm starting to go offline? And how can you practice becoming more aware this week to catch it before you're in red? If you like these kind of conversations, I have a workbook called the Unlock Workbook. It's 52 exercises that help you grow personally, that help you catch these thought habits that can derail us. Subscribe if you haven't already, and deep dive number 5 is coming soon, and we'll cover the 2 most relational blind spots: projecting and comparing.